Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from AnthonyMorganti.com, and this is episode 5 of Photo Critiques. And in Photo Critiques, people send me in 3 to 10 images of their best work, and I critique each image with suggestions on how they could improve their photography. And today, I'm pleased to critique the work of Roy Deng. Roy sent me 3 very similar images, and they're classified as environmental portraits. And what environmental portraits are is a portrait of a person in their normal environment. And what that means is it could be like a football player on the football field, but not an action shot. It's an actual portrait of the person on the football player on a football field, or maybe it's an artist in their studio, something like that. And in this case, Roy sent me pictures of this cute little girl in a park setting. So she's in her environment, a little girl in the playground at the park. And in this first shot, Roy did a lot of things that are really nice, and that those that aren't as experienced at photography could learn from. The number one thing is when you're photographing children, you want to get at a very low angle. You want to shoot at least at their eye level, preferably even a little lower, and shoot up at the child. And the reason for that is if you shot at your normal adult height down at the child, the first thing someone notices when they're looking at the photograph is that the person, is a tiny person. That's all they notice. They tend to not notice other things about the child. When you get low and shoot up, the first thing we notice is that it's a cute little girl. She's wearing pretty clothes. It's a windy day. The wind is lightly blowing her hair. Things like that. You're not really focusing on the fact that it's a child as much, or a little child, as you would if Roy stood higher and shot down at her face. The other thing Roy did is he has the background blurred out slightly in this case. And what that serves to do is it makes her stand out. So you could tell she's separate from the background. And it puts the focus and emphasis more on his model. And typically, in just about any portrait, really, you do want the background to be blurred. And sometimes you want it more blurred, less blurred, and as you get more experience, you know how to deal with it. In this case, I think he has just enough blur where we could tell she's in a park setting, but it's not so crisp and focused that she would start to look like she's like part of the background. In this way, she's isolated from the background. So this is a really nice shot in that regard. The only thing I could say on this particular shot that Roy could improve it is the catch lights in her eyes are very tiny. Catch lights in eyes in any portrait add some liveliness to the model. It makes them look alive and active. And in this case, these catch lights are tiny. And it looks like, looking at the catch lights, it's hard for me to know for sure, but it looks like he did use an external light. It could have been a portable flash, or it could have been an on-camera flash that he had off-camera a little bit. Either way, if he would have moved that light source a little closer to her, and of course he would have had to reduce the power, the catch lights would have become larger, and I think it would have added to the shot. If he didn't use a light, or he didn't have a light, he could use a reflector and reflect the sun back into her eyes, and that would have created a catch light. And as a last resort, he could bring this photo over into Photoshop, and he could create catch lights with Photoshop in her eyes. That would have been added more to the photograph. So that's all I could really suggest on this one. The next photo is little girl on the swing. And I like that she's wearing the light clothes, and it makes her stand out from the background. In this shot here, this was probably a difficult shot for him to achieve, just because it looks cluttered. We have this I don't know, piece of playground equipment. It's jutting out into the picture here, and it's distracting. If he could have repositioned himself so he could have got a similar shot and eliminated this, that would have helped. The other thing is, now we could see that she's standing on a swing and probably lightly swinging. Um, in this case, what I would have suggested is he could have focused on the child. The swing and the chains on the swing would have been in good focus. If he would have used a wider aperture, he would have blurred out this background even more, and that would have made her stand out a little more, even though she's wearing that white dress against the dark background. Having more of a blur back here would have helped. Now, he could have achieved that, I mentioned, by opening the aperture further. The other thing is he could have used a longer lens. I looked at the metadata on his file, and I can't remember specifically on this shot, but I think he was using a 50 millimeter lens. And he was on a crop sensor camera, so that is effectively around, he was using a Canon. It probably was around 80 millimeters. If he would have used more like 110 or even a 200 millimeter lens and stood a little further back, but shot so this was eliminated from the shot and maybe just inside of this post of the swing set and equally on this side, she would have been more isolated. The background, using the longer lens and still focusing on her as the focal point, it would have, and using maybe the same aperture, the background would have been more blurred. And we know we don't need to see these trees because know those are specifically trees, because we could see she's in a park with the swing and she's at a playground. So that's just my suggestion there. You've got to eliminate this this piece, maybe even these bars here from the photograph, and do something to just blur that background just a little more so she pops out of it a little better. This is the final shot he sent me, and this is the only color of the three. And this is a nice shot. She's jumping off this picnic table. And I looked, as I recall, the metadata. He had to use a 1/4000th of a second shutter speed to freeze her action because she's flying through the air. In this case, I like that the background is just blurred slightly, so I think he nailed the aperture on this one, and he nailed the shutter speed, so she's well frozen in time here. If you did zoom in, you would notice she is a little bit soft, and not all of that is motion blur. Like you can see, her tips of her fingers is from motion blur, but she's soft because it's not focused real crisply right on her. So if the focus was a little better on her. The other thing is, I think it's overexposed by about a half a stop. It's a little bit exposed right in here where looks like the sun is coming this way. So that's a little bit overexposed. If you would have brought the exposure down a little bit and double check that. I know she's jumping through air, but try to get that focus a little tighter on her. It's difficult to do because he's using a wider aperture to blur the background, so his depth of field is very limited. But you really want to make sure that that her eyes in particular, in this case you only really could see one barely, but in a portrait you always want the eyes to be the focal point. So I would have focused still on her eyes or maybe her ear, and that would have gave enough depth of field where her entire face would have been in crisp focus. So that's all I really could suggest on that. So beyond all of that, I mean, Roy took some really nice shots. They're beautiful shots. Like I mentioned, if he just came in just a little tighter on this one, and on this one, if he was get these catch lights a little bigger, it would have improved that. So, but remember that on your portraits or your environmental portraits, you want to experiment take several shots with varying apertures. So you blur the background at varying degrees, so you could get the model to stand out and jump out from the background. Remember catch lights, do what you need to do. hopefully in camera, to create catch lights, either using a flash or a reflector to create the catch lights. And don't just remember to you know eliminate these unnecessary objects and to focus on the subject as best you can to make it as crisp and clear as possible. So I'd really like to thank Roy for sending me his photographs to critique. I'm glad to critique anyone's work. All you got to do is send me 3 to 10 of your best images. Email them to critiques@anthonymorganti.com. If you go over to my website, at the top of the website you'll see a heading Critiques. Click on that and then scroll all the way to the bottom, and there's instructions there on how to send me your images to critique. It will take me a while to do. I've been getting quite a few in, and I don't want to do one every single day. That would get boring on the website. I want to spread them out a little bit. Try to do one a week or so. So feel free to send me in 3 to 10 of your best images, and I'll critique them for you. I'd also like to thank everyone that has subscribed to my YouTube channel, and if you haven't already, I'd really appreciate if you did. And that's it. Until the next episode of Photo Critiques, everyone keep shooting and enjoy photography. I hope you enjoy photography like I do. Thanks.